What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the O Show. It's episode 693 of the podcast. We are presented by Snap Active Lifestyle. All you got to do is snap one of these bad boys. Snap it, squeeze it, share it. Never snap alone, too. Adrian, you got yours, right?
Damn straight. I can't wait to try this.
You got your
Snap
Active Lifestyle. I'm going to give you one, Shawne. Like I said, straight energy. If you snap these, and we will be completely wired for the next hour of this podcast. You want to head on over to osnap.com/Jack O'Hara to get your free packets today. I'm going to snap one right now. It's literally just snap it.
Oh, snap.
And that's literally what it is. And I'll have a panic attack about 15 minutes into this podcast.
That's why I'm here. I'm back up just in case.
But yeah, osnap.com/Jack O'Hara. Adrian Hernandez back for a second straight episode. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
98.5 The Bet here in Las Vegas.
Yes,
and our special guest today, Mr. Shawne Merriman. So thank you so much, boys, for spending your Thursday afternoon with me.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
So,
by the way, we've been trying to
do this for a long time.
We've been trying to do this
right?
for a while. Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to do this for a while. Obviously, you're a busy guy, so it was all about coordinating, schedules. Because let's run down the resume. Former All-Pro NFL linebacker, obviously the founder of your new MMA league, Lights Out, Xtreme Fighting, just a brand builder, I'd say, in general, right? Because I've heard you say on multiple shows, like, an 18-year playing career is one thing, and to have success in that, and a tremendous resume, in that is one thing, but 18 years, that's a short portion of your life. Like, you want to build something that's going to last a lifetime and really build your legacy.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me and kind of where I come from, you don't look to have this longevity, right? It's just, because you haven't seen it. The people I was around growing up, you don't see it. So that was just something I kind of put in the plan when I played. My mind was always outside of the game. Like, okay, when I'm done, this is what I want to do. Right. And I just put a plan and I kept getting after it every day.
I mean, it's impressive. Like, Lights Out, the nickname came from you knocking out 4 guys in one high school game, right?
Yeah. And I was 16 years old, right? 173 pounds soaking wet with Timberland boots on.
So you were just intense. Like, you talk about 100. I'm at 173 pounds right now. You were that at 16 years old.
Yeah, man. You know what? For me, it was always the mentality, right? It was. You get to a certain level, there's a bunch of athletes, speed, power, explosion. All these guys are really good athletes. But the ones that kind of had that little bit of an edge, it's their mentality. Like, I wasn't going in to try to tackle somebody, get them on the ground. I was going in to try to hurt you, right? And I would inflict some pain. That was my mentality. And I think that when you start to put the athletic side, the speed, power, all that, then the mentality to go out and do these things, you get a nickname like Lights Out.
Was that the coaching style back then, to not to hurt people, but to be as intense as possible? Because obviously the game's changed with all the different rule changes and obviously the concussion protocol and everything now.
Yeah, and the thing is, the game has changed so much, and for the better. By the way, I'm not like one of these old school guys that sit up here and say, "Oh, back when we had leather helmets and no mouthpiece." I'm not that, right? So I do think the NFL has done a great job at eliminating the helmet to helmet, or try to as much as possible. Crackback blocks and certain things like that. I believe that they did the right thing, but you can't, even if you wanted to, you can't do everything anymore. You just can't. When I watch games now, I sit back and I look, say, okay, I would have got fined on that play. I would have did that. And I'm like, okay, I would have been playing for free.
How frustrating is it, though, that, obviously the league is tilted more offensively. You can't touch the quarterback. You ever get moments like, nah, I couldn't play in this because the rules are so tilted because they want that high-scoring offense?
Yeah, I always say that, actually. But being on the business side of things, I understand why it's an offensive-driven game, quarterback-driven game, because a star quarterback, a Patrick Mahomes, can change your organization. He really can. And so you want to protect those guys as much as possible. It's the reason why they're getting $200+ million contracts now, right? They are your investment. So selfishly, I hate it because you want to go out and blast those guys any chance you get an opportunity to. But on the business side, you got to think that the NFL is much better with a healthy Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. Like, when they're healthy and they're protected, the NFL is better.
So was that a big learning curve for you coming out of high school then, where it was just about playing the game and playing as intensely as you possibly could to where now you're drafted, now it's a business, and people are kind of at one side, like the coaching staff is obviously forming you into like a young man and wanting you to be the best possible performer you could be on the field, but then there is the business aspect of it that you got to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, no question about it.
It is your livelihood.
Dude, this is a crazy story. So back when I was playing, when I was a rookie, I got drafted in 2005, walking to the locker room with Phillip Rivers, Lorenzo Neal, Antonio Gates, and LT, right?
Yeah.
And so we used to get paid for, strip sacks, strips and making the offensive guys fumble. We would get anywhere from like $300 to $500 a strip, right? And so we always had bets going. And some days I'll make $1,000, right? An extra $1,000 being at practice. I'll swat the ball and knock the ball at hands. But there was one day in particular that my rookie year, and I don't know anybody. I just turned 21. I don't know shit, right? I go in and tomahawk, try to slap the ball out of LT's hands, and end up tackling him straight to the ground. And when I say you can hear a pin drop in practice, it was so quiet, and I stood up, celebrate. He didn't fumble, but I stood up, and I was so proud of myself, right? Because I went in to try to get the ball from LT, and I get up, and I'm looking around, and everybody's mouth is just like, Shawne, what the hell are you doing? And this is when I found out the NFL was a business. So the coaches didn't really say much to me. Nobody really said anything to me after that. But as I was walking on the field, coaches said, hey, we need to meet with you. And they took me in a meeting room, and I said, hey, what's up? I'm thinking like, okay, shit, what did I do wrong? They said, look, we love the way you play. We love the way you practice. It's the reason why we drafted you, for that reason. We love everything, the intensity, all these things they started naming. They said, but do us a favor. And this is linebackers in there, the head coach, Marty Schottenheimer, in the room, a little teeny room. They said, do us a favor and never hit LT again. And so, I'm looking at that point, and I said, for what? I'm hitting there. They said, Shawne, he feeds our kids.
Yep.
So at that point, I knew, like, okay, this is the NFL, right? You got your superstars, you got your players. I mean, obviously, LT is one of the best who ever did it, but that's when I found out that day. I said, this is a different ball game. It's not like college or high school where you're going just out and having a good time and you having a passion and love for the game. You can't do that here. It's a business.
Mm-hmm. And that's your franchise running back behind Phillip Rivers, too.
Exactly.
Part of you's probably like, yeah, I get it. That's LaDainian Tomlinson. Like, I probably shouldn't injure him in practice, but at the same time, like, I'm intense. Like, I'm competitive.
Yeah, and that's how that my mind thought process. But I think that at that moment it grounded me, and I realized, I said, okay, because it's all the linebacker coaches, Wade Phillip, defensive coordinator, Marty Schott. We're in the room half the size of this, and they're circling me up, and I'm. You're in a small room with a lot of people around you. You feel the intensity that something's about to happen or they're about to say something. It was that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you're probably thinking like, okay, I'm going to get cut today. Like, this is
bad. I had a guaranteed contract. I wasn't worried about this.
He's like, I was drafted 12th. I'm straight.
Yeah.
So you understood the business aspect. Like, I can get away with whatever I want. The quote that I loved, I think you did an interview a few months back talking about, ESPN, like a blogger showing up to your high school and interviewing you. And you said basically like, yeah, I can get away with anything and not go to jail. That was the quote. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, the confidence this guy breeds at 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, I was 16.
But was that like out of anger? Or was
No. So I just got rated in the country. I was, top 50 or 7,500, whatever that number was in the country. And I was on the ESPN prospect. And mind you, I don't, where I come from, I don't have media training and any of that stuff. And so a reporter was coming to ask me from ESPN. It was my first big publication or anything I've ever done. And he said, Shawne, man, the way you play, you're intense, you're passionate, you go out and lay it out in the line. What got you, why did you start playing football? And I looked at the reporter and not know anything, not any training, anything like that. I said, well, sir, I can do anything I want to anybody and not go to jail. And
it's a crazy line.
The reporter looked at me. He said, okay. It was the most awkward 30 seconds after that ever. I'm sure he probably thought I was going to end up being a serial killer or somebody, just going, Yeah, because I didn't have that. I didn't have any training. I just spoke from the reason why I started playing football. I'm like, I played basketball too. Obviously, I started playing basketball first, and I was all county, and played against a bunch of other great basketball players. And KD came from my area, Michael Beasley, all these guys. We came up in around the basketball time too, and I used to foul out every basketball game. Everyone, I would foul out. At some point in time, I was going to foul out a basketball game.
It's a classic football player playing basketball.
Yeah.
Hard fouls, all six of them.
For sure. And I could hoop, I could hoop, but I was going up for rebounds and throwing elbows and whatever, right? I was that. But my basketball coach said, hey, we got something that I think you'll be really good at doing, right? And they told me I went out for football. My first day of practice, I think I was like 10 or 11 years old. First day of practice, I didn't know anything about football. I had no idea. I didn't even watch it on TV at that point. And so my Boys and Girls Club, my Pee Wee League coach, I asked him, I said, hey, what do you want me to do, right? He said, you see that kid right there with the football? I want you to hit him. Or anybody that has the football in their hands, I want you to hit him. And I looked at him like, I'm 11 years old. I'm like, okay, that's it? That's all I got to do? He said, yeah. On my whistle. So they blew the whistle. The kid, running back, came out. It was like a swing pass or a sweep or something like that to the outside. I tracked the kid down. I hit him. He went under the coolers. All the Gatorade stuff fell down. The bottle, the water bottle, everything fell down. The kid's parent, who was at practice, ran over there under him and was looking at me like I just tried to, what are you doing? This is practice. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, damn, I'm embarrassed. I'm like scared, right? So I go back to the huddle. My head is down, and my coaches look at me. I said, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." The kid's parent mad at me, and she's still yelling. She's still going off, and my head is down. Like you see somebody tuck their head between their legs, and my head is down. He said, "Look, do that shit again." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Coach, the parent, she's mad at me, and she's yelling at me, and all." No, we love that. We do it again. Next play, the next run. I was getting applauded for playing this way because that was really the only way I knew how to play.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they probably loved it too. They're just like, yeah, we'll tell him, Tracy. It's like, no, we love this.
Yeah, and they did that. They was like,
okay?
Oh, he's like, oh,
as far as she's concerned, yeah, we don't want this, but keep doing it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, do that shit again. Like, okay, cool, I'll do it again.
I think you touched on a cool thing that I think doesn't get talked about a lot in sports is just coming from the backgrounds that a lot of athletes come from and then getting a whole bunch of money. I mean, hell, you could specifically talk about Shawne Merriman if we want, and there could be some dynamics with that. But one thing I do want to talk about, because you talked about your rookie year and going into camp in the first day being like, you don't touch any of these dudes. That offense, you brought up LT, you brought up Antonio Gates, Phillip Rivers, rest in peace to Vincent Jackson. How much of going up against those guys for so many years and you guys being so damn good with Marty Schottenheimer, how much do you think that influenced your career and being good when you're going up against them every day and that's practice?
I was extremely fortunate, right? Because sometimes you can get drafted by a shitty team, shitty organization.
I'm from Cleveland. I'm a Browns fan. I know what you're talking about.
So they had the third pick of the draft when I came out, and they ended up going with Braylon Edwards. And nothing against Cleveland, but I was like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to lose, right? That was my number one thing. I don't care about the money. I probably made an extra $7-8 million. I said, I don't care. I don't want to lose, right? So pass me up Cleveland at 3, pass me up 10 to the Lions. Only two teams I was even looking forward to actually going to was either the Cowboys or the Chargers. That was the only two teams I was actually looking forward to going. It was in that top 15. And so I walk into the locker room, and you got all the people you just named, LT. You can't even you got to be away from the game a little bit to fathom walking into that, because LT, Hall of Famer, Antonio Gates, Hall of Famer, my opinion, Phillip Rivers, Hall of Famer, Lorenzo Neal in my opinion, should be a Hall of Famer, right? So I played with at least 4 Hall of Famers on one team. That doesn't happen.
Pro bowlers everywhere. Quentin Jammer.
Quentin, Jam, Cromartie. I played with all these guys, and Jamal Williams that people don't really talk about too much, but was a beast. And so you look back on it, and my career could have went much different, because there's some really good players just on some shitty teams that nobody never hear about. Like a Cincinnati or Cleveland when they be. My boy that I played ball with, DeQuell Jackson, who played in Cleveland, monster.
Underrated. 'Cause he was in Cleveland.
But he was in Cleveland. You know, you take DeQuell Jackson or anybody of that magnitude coming out of college and you put him with a good organization, you're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber player. And with those numbers he picked up, you know, he'll probably have a lot of TV games and he'll win a lot of games. So I was fortunate being in that situation where I'm walking into that type of locker room.
Mm-hmm. So would you say you were by far a big fish in a small pond coming out of high school?
You know, going to Maryland, or you mean coming out of college?
Yeah, like coming out of high school, like going into college, I'd say.
No, I was because I went to University of Maryland,
Right.
and so I was like, you know, top. They got this thing called the All Metropolitan, All Met team, right? And now Ahmad Brooks, all these great players that, you know, played. You know, Ahmad played with the 49ers and some other players, but Ahmad Brooks was one of the best players coming out of our area. But I ended up winning the #1 player in that D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, which there were a lot that came from there. And so I had a lot of hype. It was all with me, man. It was always hype. I did have always a lot of hype with me because of the nickname and me talking shit. And it was, you know, I was always with it. So I always had a lot of hype. So I had to, in a sense, live up to that hype always.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, let me tell you, you can't walk around with a nickname like Lights Out and not perform.
No, dude.
You just can't, because they do. Like, man, I'm not, who does guy think he is? I'm not calling him Lights Out.
What's the tattoo? Was that like your first tattoo?
Yeah. So I got the light switch.
Your mom didn't want it, right?
No, she ripped me.
Anti-tattoo?
So after I knocked out the 4 kids in the game in high school, I went home. I think that Monday or Tuesday, when people started calling me, the kids started calling me Lights Out in high school. So I went home and I begged my mom. I was like, please let me get this Lights Out tattoo. I had a friend of mine to sketch it, what I wanted. I said, showed her. I said, hey, this thing's gonna be big one day. Like, let me get Lights Out. And she looked at me. She said, and she was smoking a cigarette. And this whole room was just, I'm going through. And I'm trying to see her, and she's laying in the bed. I said, Mom, let me get. She said, boy, get the hell out the room. Right? Was the exact word. I said, boy, get the hell out the room. And so every day for 2 weeks straight, every single day. And finally, she said, boy, would you leave me? Okay, all right, let's go get it. And like that, we went to go get it. And I just, you know, always had this, you know, this thing about branding, right, and marketing and kind of, you know, people looked at it back then, it was like self-promotion, right? And it wasn't calling branding back then. It wasn't calling, you know, it was just like you were cocky, like, oh, who this guy? But to me, I just had a thing about branding and doing that, but we just didn't have a name for it back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you look at like a Conor McGregor, right? Where everybody's just like, he's cocky, he's doing his shit, like talking about, you know, Dustin Poirier's wife, you know, while his
leg
ankle's
is broken,
completely
yeah.
shattered. Everybody's like, what a dick. Like, you lost. Like, it's like, this is not the time to do that. But it's like, no, like, your mouth is making your millions. You know, like, your fighting game got you here, but your ability to market yourself and promote yourself and say all of this controversial stuff that gets people talking, that's what's made you your money. And that's what's going to continue to make you your money.
Yeah, you know, and, you know, I know him and Michael Chandler got a fight coming up, but same thing with Michael. You know, when he was at Bellator, he was good. People knew about him in the fight game, but not like he does now. You know, he got to UFC and he said, you know, see you at the top. And it got on that mic, he blew up. And sometimes you got to have this you have to have this self-belief, like beyond belief, like beyond that anybody can imagine that you have. And even if it looks crazy to everybody else, you still have to have it.
Yeah.
And most of the people that are looked at like crazy are the ones that actually go out and do the shit.
Yeah, it's like almost you have to have like respectful arrogance. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to come off as like someone who just thinks they're better than everybody else, but you have to have that self-confidence, and you have to have that true self-confidence to bleed through, even though if it looks kind of poor in the eyes of other people, like, oh, that's not how I was raised.
Yeah, and you know what? There's nothing if you're willing to put in the work, right? So you got some people out just running their mouth and self-promoting. You're like, God, dude, shut up. What, you haven't sacked anybody. You haven't knocked anybody out. You haven't, like, come on.
Like the Grizzlies, like the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, like that is, honestly, that is the perfect analogy with them, because they would be the prototype in the dictionary right there about people just talk, and don't back anything up, you know? And so I see nothing wrong with you talking like that if you're willing to put in the work to back it up.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing with Connor, right? Like he's done everything at this point in his career. Like he's losing his mojo's, lost his last couple of fights, so it's like, okay, maybe you should turn it down a notch. But like you're already a Hall of Fame MMA fighter, right? Where like I feel like I guess the Memphis Grizzlies would be the best example there, where they just talk, and then at some point you gotta do something to back that up. But that's interesting. Like when it comes to the lights out nickname, to go back to that, are we talking like straight 4 guys out on stretchers, or just like knock the wind out of them, or?
Two of the guys left the game and just didn't come back. The other one, so they went out, and they got up and was held to the sideline, didn't come back. Other guy, I think I broke his collarbone or something like that, and he was carried out.
So were these like 4 instances where like you're down on one knee, like everybody's just waiting to see what happened?
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of somebody down the ground. There was 4 times.
By like the 3rd time, they're like, "Is that the same kid who did that?
What's going on?
Get him off the field."
And the funny part about that is the following home game we had. We used to have this basketball court. We walk up the basketball court to the grass, and they would like parents just trying to stop me from getting on the field.
That's wild.
Because they just, first of all, they thought the coaches were holding me back for a couple of years, and they thought I was a lot older than what I was, not knowing that I was the youngest really on the team. And so, but that it started to get out there, and then in the press and the Washington Post and Baltimore Sun, when it started to really catch fire, and the media started to call me, and local media and actually national, because it was Washington Post and Baltimore Sun, they was calling me lights out. That's when it kind of picked up.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like you loved that right away. It's like, lights out, that sounds good.
Yeah, because it was you know what it was for me? It was like I get 60 minutes. You see a Leonardo DiCaprio or one of these guys. They like Leo's not walking around talking like the Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Like he's not, but he get that time period to be that person. And for me, it was 60 minutes. It was 4 quarters. I get a chance to be lights out. And that was when the Blue Mohawk came, and the plan and just the whole everything. I was lights out for those 4 quarters. And that to me was the biggest part, because there wasn't a game I didn't walk into where I didn't have a target on my back. I remember the offensive line coach, we were playing Philly at home, and the offensive line coach, Donovan McNabb was at quarterback, had walked up to me before the game and said, "Shawne, let me tell you, I got a lot of respect for you, and I think you're a hell of a player, but you ain't touching Donovan today."
Stupidest thing you could have
done. No.
It was
so that's what I thought. I said, "Man, I'm gonna tear his, I can't wait. I'm gonna show him, right?" Dude, I never saw so many formations and so many people block me ever. I couldn't believe it. It was just like they didn't care who else made a play. They didn't care what else happened. They wanted to make sure I didn't. Yeah. And the whole time when he told me that, I said, "I don't watch. And they were motioning guys, hitting me before they get out in their routes, the tight ends. And then when I beat the tight end, the running back came and chop blocked me. When I beat him, the offensive tackle stood there. I said, this is for 4 quarters. For 4 quarters, they didn't let this happen. And actually, when I was about to break the sack record at home at the end of the year, we were playing Arizona, and Kurt Warner was at quarterback. And they all knew that I was on the lines of the sack record. And I didn't know this till years after everything happened, because I was friends with Larry Fitzgerald. And they had Leonard Davis on the front line. By the way, one of the biggest damn human beings I ever saw in my life. And the same thing, they said they wanted to make sure that I did not get that sack record. And if you look at when I hit Kurt Warner, look at that one play and watch how many people tried to block me on that one play. They blocked me, they cut blocked me, so I hopped him and I jumped off one foot and I got Kurt Warner.
That's a shame you didn't get the Strahan treatment when Brett Favre just was like,
oh, hell
sit
no.
down real quick.
Hell no. Nobody was falling for me. They wanted to make, because you know why? This is the truth. They wanted to make sure I didn't do that damn lights out dance.
Yeah.
And 06, I don't know if you remember this game, we were playing the Patriots in the playoffs. And
at home, right?
At home, when we got knocked out. And the whole team, the entire team, other than like Tom Brady and maybe 2 or 3 other guys, were doing lights out dance. Vincent
Really?
Wolford, Roosevelt Coleman, everybody was doing like, it was a big fight after the game because LT was in the crowd. Like LT went after some of the players for doing the dance, so did Phillip Rivers. I didn't even know what was going on because I was on the sideline with my head down. I was just crushed. We lost that game. So I found out, years later that I think they like slid me a picture of me doing the lights out dance under the hotel, the door to the players or in the locker room.
So they could like practice.
Yeah.
So this was premeditated.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So they were
motivation too, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. So they sent basically everybody on the offense at least, or defense, maybe the team. I don't know. A picture of me doing, from what I hear, guys that talk now. So it was either in everybody's locker or they slid it under the hotel door of me doing the lights out dance. And so that's why they did it, because they was using that as motivation for them winning.
I don't want to bring up any demons right now. I'm not trying to do this on purpose. But like I told you, I'm from Cleveland, and I wanted to enjoy football. And, Antonio Gates went to Kent State. So I liked you guys a lot. LT, I still got my Antonio Gates jersey. And you bring up that 06 game against the Patriots and how good you guys were, consistently winning the division, 12-4, 11-5s. Marty Schottenheimer. Does it ever, at this point now, post-NFL career, do you ever sit back and just go, damn, how did we never win or even get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah. Not all the time, but especially when I have.
Because when Vincent Jackson, I don't mean to cut you off, like when Vincent Jackson passed away, I went back myself. I was like watching all these highlights because I'm like, damn, V-Jack, I went to school in Tampa. I know he spent a lot of time down there.
Right.
So I kind of relived everything, and I'm like, damn.
It mainly hits me when I go do football stuff, like at the Super Bowl. I'm sitting up at the panel, and
because you're on the field, you're around it.
Well, yeah, that too. And that's why I won't go to a Super Bowl. Yeah. Because I always say the only time I'm going to a Super Bowl if I'm playing in it. Other than that, I don't need to go. But I remember when I retired and I was at NFL Network, and Deion Sanders on the end, Marshall Faulk, Michael Irvin, Willie McGinn. It was all these guys, and everybody up there had that big ass Super Bowl ring. Sometimes some of them 2 or 3 of them, and I'm just sitting up. I'm like, damn, So in those times, yeah, I do. It hits me. I'm like, because truthfully, that 06 team we had should go down as one of the best teams ever in football.
Facts.
Ever. Mm-hmm. And we'll never be talked about in that light because we didn't win a ring. Mm-hmm. But you go back on that team, name 20 teams, name 15 teams that was more dominant than we were. Across the board, not just saying the defense. I think we led the league in sacks and interceptions, turnovers, and all that stuff. LT obviously breaking the record that year, or whatever. But look at the dominance that we had, and you look back and say, man, and when people talk about all decade teams, they don't even bring us up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what?
There's too many 12-4 and 11-5s. Too much success for that to be ignored.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
and to keep a core unit like that together for as long as San Diego did with you guys.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, those were our guys growing up. Like that era of fans growing up, like those were our boys. And for, it never to kind of culminate in that final Cinderella story moment is frustrating.
Yeah, like even now, obviously LT went to the Hall of Fame. I was there. Gates is going to be up here soon. And so when we talk about Phillip Rivers, that really pisses me off. Like whether he's a Hall of Fame or not, but every category he has is showing Hall of Fame numbers. Mm-hmm. And the only gripe that anybody or anything what they say he doesn't have a ring, mm-hmm. right? And I'm like, hold on, his other quarterbacks didn't get a ring that are up here that nobody say anything about, right?
Or one that won a ring, but I thought was a little less if you look at the stats and everything. I mean, Drew Brees. I think a lot of people have that argument of Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, and obviously Drew won the one with the Saints, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, people had this debate all the time. Like, Phillip Rivers is way better than Eli Manning. But when you're talking about, okay, Eli got 2 Super Bowl rings, Eli and Phil doesn't have nothing, but talking about the one-on-one comparison, it ain't. Yeah, it's not even close. But those rings kind of just put you at a different level when you have them.
And when you beat the greatest quarterback of all time in both those Super Bowls, the way Eli did, I think his entire career, 4 playoff appearances, 4 or 5, and then those 2 rings against Brady.
Yeah. Well, the only playoff wins were the Super Bowl runs. So outside of that,
he didn't win
made the
playoffs
game. A couple games, but they never made it. And you guys is going back to your dominance. To me, it was funny, and no disrespect to the Eagles because they did have a great defense this year. And just talking about great teams that don't get talked a lot about. You guys and your guys' era. The number one for me is that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. What was it, in 03 when they won the Super Bowl and they
Derek
beat
Brooks
the
and
Raiders?
those guys?
You look at that defense specifically, and let me see if you agree with me or not. I can't name another defense that at every part of that facet, from the front line to the linebackers to the corners to the safeties, Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Simeon Rice. I said Derek Brooks already. Hall of Famers, Barber, Hall of Famers, a corner. Every part of that defense had a Hall of Famer, and it's just one of those things that they don't get talked about a lot, just because of the buzz, or maybe it was just a little bit of success.
Yeah, and that happens. And the crazy part about that is, and look at their defense. I think they have 4 Hall of Famers on their defense, right?
And greats.
And greats, yeah. I mean, at safety, you get John Lynch,
Barber, Brooks,
Sapp, Simeon Rice,
Shelton Quarles,
yes,
Dexter Jackson, who was just a random cornerback. He's the one who walked away with the Super Bowl MVP.
Yep.
And then he got paid. Never really did anything after that. But, hey, man, you got paid, and I salute you. But it's just one of those things, and it's like they don't get brought up enough because it's Tampa, and before Brady got there, small market. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
That was the year Gruden, they traded, the Raiders traded their head coach to Tampa Bay, and then he won a Super Bowl with them.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which
that
is
was
nuts.
And ironically, the Super Bowl was in San Diego. That Qualcomm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be a surreal, because that happened for like the first time ever a few years ago, where Brady brought the Bucs to the Super Bowl and they got to host it in their own stadium.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm shocked that that's never happened before.
Well,
then.
if you look at the odds, I'm not shocked, because if you look at the odds, it's very slim to ever happen. I mean, you got to, first of all, you got to be timed up, because the Super Bowl changes every year. And for example, if there's a new stadium that's being built, they're going to get a Super Bowl. So how often can you time it up where the Super Bowl is going to be?
Or either be on the West Coast team, because more than likely he's going to be in the West Coast. They did MetLife a couple times and took a risk where the weather isn't that great, but they're like, it's New York, so we'll go there. Do you mind, because I know this is your show, can I shift gears real quick?
Dude, by all means. It's why you're here. I wouldn't have invited you here if you weren't going to interrupt.
Thank you, because I know you guys were talking about MMA a little bit.
I love people who are passionate about their job, so.
Thank you so much. So Shawne, I'm a real big wrestling fan. One of the dudes that I love is The Undertaker. And The Undertaker, huge MMA fan. He brought a lot of those moves to the wrestling ring. He was one of the first ones to wear the gloves, like out as The Undertaker. And one of the questions he gets is people ask him, when he was coming up in the 70s and 80s, MMA wasn't as big. And he's like, well, if I was coming up now, I wouldn't have done professional wrestling. I probably would have gotten to the octagon. So I'm going to ask you the same thing, switching it up. If you were born in this era, would you have gone the MMA route, or would you have stood out with football?
So I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland. So my uncle, professional boxers, we had championship boxers coming around the neighborhood as I was growing up. I mean, I would see them all. I would see Riddick Bowe coming down all the time, and Sugar Ray in his gym in Palmer Park, Maryland, was not too far from me. So I was around boxers all the time. So I already had that in me to do anyway, to fight. That was I grew up fighting. It was just a part of our culture in the first place. But what I would have done now is, when I retired, I would have still played football. I would have still, because that was more my heart was. I would have played football. But what I would have done, if it's now, is I would have retired and went straight into training for like full time. And when I came out and I retired, they wasn't paying guys like they are now. I remember I was talking to this probably like in 2014, 15 or 16, and I almost working on a deal with Bellator to fight, and they just wouldn't come up on the number. And I said, I was trying to tell them, I was like, guys, we can go pay-per-view right away. We can go against another athlete, freak show against a WWE guy. I wanted to go up to fight Dave Bautista at one time. He was training.
Or Lashley. I know Lashley was left WWE.
So Bobby Lashley wanted to fight, but he.
I feel like you and Dave though would be.
Yeah, I thought it would have been
body type wise. I feel like they're very similar.
And he had just came off of having a fight in Russia.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing it was a couple things that stopped that. He was, I think, starting to shoot in the Galaxy. It was like in 2016 or something like that. He started shooting Guardians of the Galaxy. So he was doing the movie stuff. I don't think his heart in time was really invested into fighting and training, even though he was still training. So I wanted to fight then. They just didn't want to pay me what I was looking for. And now, if what I was asking for, it's a guarantee. It's a guarantee because you go, you build a card up, you have a couple more athletes on there, and me being on this side of the business now, I tell you exactly what I would have done.
Yeah.
And you make us the main event, but you probably got 8 to 10 guys who you're trying to build and get seen. Some up and coming superstars. You have us to go main event, a big main event, big co-main event, and you fill that card up with anybody you're trying to build and get out there. And that could have happened in a second. But talking to Scott Coker and those guys, they didn't want to pay. And to me, in my head, I'm thinking like, shit, y'all crazy. I would have threw that that money in a second.
You already have the marketing. You already have the star power.
Everybody want to see their favorite former athlete scrap. It's the reason why. Frank Gore's fighting, Adrian Peterson, Le'Veon Bell's having success now. Even for a short period of time, Greg Hardy did well early on.
Right.
He looked good. He was going against some championship fighters that actually looked pretty good in some of them. And so everybody that transition was easy for a lot of us. But I was at the NFL Network. I was at the NFL Network of Fox Sports at the time, and I was training down in WWE at the Performance Center in Orlando.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to work everything out where I go spend time. I can still do my hosting jobs, but I can also go and work and do some stuff with the WWE still. And so and train behind the scenes and get ready for NXT because that was going to happen. And the funny thing about that is I was like this close from signing with WWE. Like that was a lock that was going to happen. And I was down there. I was with my publicist, Denise White. I was with from EAG. She came down there with me, and so I was seeing everybody cut their promos. And this was like when everybody who's a superstar now, they were just going through the pipeline, trying to make their way up at NXT or doing house shows or whatever it was. And at about 60, I would say 60 of the wrestlers, the talent out there, and they were all cutting their promos in front of everybody. And so I'm sitting back there for 2 hours. And I'm sitting back there for 2 hours, and I'm tapping my publicist and said, "Hey, let's get out of here. What are we doing here? What are we doing here?" And right as I'm about to get up, Dusty Rhodes, he said, "I bet you didn't think I was going to do this, but 56, bring your ass on down here." I said, "Oh shit."
Yeah, that's Dusty.
So I'm
That's
like,
the American dream. That's
that's this Dusty Rhodes. What are you gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the back, and I got 25 seconds of walking, 20 seconds of walking, and I got to figure out. I didn't rehearse anything, I didn't rehearse anything at all. So I'm nervous as hell because Regal is up there and Dusty Rhodes, like all
plus everybody else.
Billy
There's a lot of
Gunn,
people.
dude. Billy Gunn was the in-ring, my in-ring coach, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to figure this thing out. I only got 20 seconds from where I was walking from until the front. And so I just jumped into character and I just started ripping on everybody there because I seen everybody's promo. And so I was already taking, mental notes like Xavier. Xavier just went up.
Xavier Woods, yeah.
Xavier Woods went up, and I think he was one of the last ones. And so I'm like, shit, I got to come up with something. But I watched Dean, my boy Mojo was down. Like so, all the people who end up being names were just coming up. And so I just got up and just ripped it for like 3 or 4 straight minutes almost. And when I got off, Regal and everybody, Dusty Rhodes said, "That's probably the best promo we've seen out of anybody ever starting out, ever." And so by the time I left that day, me and Dusty Rhodes, we sat in his office for like 3 hours talking. He loved football. He loved football. Dusty Rhodes loved football, man. So we sat there for 3 hours talking football, SEC, college. He loved college football. But then we got into the pro stuff. And by the time I got home, I had a contract in my email already from my publicist and my management.
It's funny that you say that you're so good at promos because one of the things with The Rock, when he brings up jabroni, and a lot of his trash talk was really what he picked up when he was in Miami, and that was just the slang that they was using on the football field, and he just brought that. That's a crazy story that everything you just told me. Thank you for saying that. So Billy Gunn was your main coach. Who else? Like what first off, like how much time were you spending in Orlando at the Performance Center? You would say during that time period, and who else other than Billy Gunn was kind of with you a lot?
Rigo, what's the cowboy hat? The big cowboy hat, tall.
That's Shawn
JBL?
Michaels?
JBL.
JBL.
JBL
Oh, yeah.
was
Not
He's a
Shawn
big
Michaels,
dude.
JBL.
JBL. So
He's
JBL,
another big football dude.
JBL actually is the one that came up and told me that JBL's been around forever, and he was the one that told me. He said this is one of the best promos I've ever seen anybody that's never practiced.
Wow.
Ever. He said ever. I've never seen it. And what's crazy is, so I was working out. They were trying to see how much they can get out of me in the ring. We went for an hour straight, nonstop in the ring. Off the ropes, flip, flat, off the ropes, jump, flip, flap. And so what people don't understand, those ropes there's metal.
Yep.
They'll burn your ass.
Those shits, it's metal. They hurt, right? Like hell. And so what you got to do is you build up a callus where it doesn't hurt, right? That muscle, that area there. So you do that for an hour. You're rolling, you're tumbling, you're jumping, you're flipping, you're landing flat for an hour. They wanted to see how much I can take.
Before you start throwing up.
Or before I throw up.
2-a-day style.
Yeah, before I threw up. And I said, well, you're gonna find out because I'm not fucking quitting. I'm not quitting.
Yeah.
So I went for an hour straight, nonstop. Never been in the ring, never, had any practice, anything like that. And this Billy Gunn was taking me through all this. So what's crazy is, and this is when, you hear all these stories about Vince McMahon, and actually we actually end up having a relationship afterwards, but at the time I never met him. They got the eye in the sky. It's him. He's watching. Vince McMahon watched my workout from Connecticut, the whole one. So he was the one that kind of gave the green light after he seen me do everything. Wow. The JBL called him and said, Shawne on the mic is really good. And that's why they offered the contract.
So they had like a cam on you, and he was watching
the whole
you
time.
from Stanford.
The Vince cam, just
Vince
connected
cam.
to anything that he sees. What was that first conversation with Vince like?
It was cool, and I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you why I have even a lot of knowledge and some success I'm having now. Right? You would think somebody that been in the industry that long is kind of hands off, right? Vince he's next level with everything he has his hand on. And we were walking, I think it was a SmackDown or Monday Night Raw. It's one of them that I was actually hosting, right? Doing a post shows. But I was there early. I wanted to meet everybody, meet the production, meet everybody, and kind of go around. That's, I always show up super early. And so I saw Vince, and he was walking down the ramp, and nobody was in there. It was just him and like 7, 8 other people behind him. They were all walking down the ramp, and then Vince looked up, and it was like this light bulb that was like faced the other direction. Mm-hmm. And he looked up, and he was like, hey. He tapped the guy that was behind him, I forgot who it was, tapped the guy behind him and said, hey, fix. I'm like, there's 1,000 lights in there. I'm like,
micromanager.
Yeah, and I was like, what? I said, first of all, how do you even see it in the first place? But to be that involved, and so I started spending some time with him, and he's next level when it comes to a lot of that, and I actually learned a lot from Vince McMahon being around him because it was nothing that he didn't do. Nothing he didn't have his hands on.
He wouldn't ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself.
He did everything right. He had his hands on every single thing that moved. And he basically told me like that's what you have to do to have that type of success. And from that point on, that's what I did. Nothing happened around me that I wouldn't do.
Oh my God. Well, there was I think Rob Gronkowski was supposed to host WrestleMania the year of the pandemic, right? And Vince wanted him to jump back first off of like a catapult that was like 20 feet high. And Rob's like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. And Vince is like, no, it's easy. I'll show you. So 75-year-old Vince McMahon goes up to the catapult, does it without even hesitating, and falls straight back on the padding that they had for him down there. And as soon as he hits it, he goes, see, Rob? Easy. Piece of cake. You do it. And Rob's like, I still don't want to do it.
That dude, honestly, that was him. And, I spent a good amount of time around him, but I think that just me being around that and having the opportunity to see that, because from the outside, you're like, okay, it's Vince McMahon, who grew this, whole entertainment business. I mean, he is wrestling. He grew everything that was going on from where wrestling was super regional, super local back in the day to a big conglomerate. You would think that he didn't have his hands in everything like he did.
That's right.
And I couldn't have been more. He had his hands in everything. And he told me, he said, if you want to be great in this business and be successful, this is what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, I said, okay, that's what I'm doing.
How much of that do you take away from starting, obviously, Extreme Fighting when it comes to Lights Out? Because Vince McMahon is a prime example of someone who's built this global empire conglomerate. What's the word?
Conglomerate.
Thank you. That's why you're here.
It's an underrated word, by the way, conglomerate.
I know, I'm awful, dude. I don't know why I do this. But he had to negotiate, deal with, and just adapt to all of these different egos, all of these different personalities. Look at Brock Lesnar. Not an easy guy to deal with, I've heard from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
All of these people, like today, you got Logan Paul coming in. It's like that guy's got an ego in some sorts. He's there to learn a lot, but like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, John Cena, Dwayne Johnson. Like these are, I know, the fighters starting out building their brands with you guys, not quite as big, but you're dealing with egos too. You're dealing with contracts. You're dealing with Fubo TV. You're dealing with all of these sponsorships, marketing. Like there's so much of it that the average person wouldn't be able to really articulate and understand. Like, oh wow, there's so much more that goes into this business besides that. How much of that from Vince did you take away? To put aside obviously your playing career and your coaching staff and being with all of those guys that you played with, because Vince is someone who's just on a different level when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, and the reason why I took a lot from being around him and working with the WWE and just being around in general, because I got just a tremendous amount of respect for anybody that get that big, that are first ones to do it, right? Because you got to think when WWE was coming around, and remember WWE back in the 80s and 90s, dude, used to be insane. Like you can do anything, say anything, like you can do everything. And it's obviously much different now. It's much more filtered and kind of, guarded, because a lot of families watch WWE and all that stuff. But back then, you got to think that you probably had some venues in some cities and some areas that say, hey, we don't want you guys here. Like we don't want that in our town. Like you're promoting violence, you're acting like we don't want that here. And so me being on this side of the business now, and I'm getting it now, but I look at, the UFC. Shit, when they were coming up, it was venues that told them, you're too violent. We don't want you here. So I have a lot of respect for people that break down those barriers, because they're the first ones to do it. Because everybody else is telling them that, hey, that's impossible. That's crazy as hell. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. I don't know what you're doing. That's stupid. You're never gonna make it. Mm-hmm. You're never gonna get there. And so. And I know these things were being said. And I know that Dana talks about it a little bit now, and he couldn't get a venue, and then Donald Trump gave them the first venue and approved. But anybody that come to market that way, I've got a tremendous, even if it's a competitor or something, like I just got a tremendous amount of respect for anybody to go through that, because behind the scenes it's hell. Mm-hmm. You see all the flashy, the glitz and glam, and the WWE entertainment. This was like when WWE Federation, like they built that. And there's no hours during the day. There's no clock in and clock out. Even now, I'll be asleep sometime and my phone might vibrate at 11:30 at night, and I'll return an email or text. When I wake up at 5, if somebody's on the East Coast and they already text or calling, that phone is getting answered. Mm-hmm. And so, me knowing what goes on really behind the scenes, I just have a tremendous amount of respect for people who've done that.
Well, especially in both, I'll use UFC and WWE as examples, right? Say what you want about WWE. It's scripted, right? Like, people have broken their freaking necks doing that stuff. Like, you have to be a professional athlete to do that stuff. You're going out there, you're knowing what you're doing, but you can get hurt, and that could result in a lawsuit on the business side. A lot of money's involved. A lot of money is involved with certain sponsors. It's live television. If you mess up, everybody's going to see it. Where in UFC, Dana had to go hoop after hoop after hoop after hoop. Like, just when you thought I had everything taken care of, there's another obstacle, right? Because, someone, like, you could die in the ring in a cage, right? And you're probably going through it too with some of your fighters where you're like we really got to be on top of everything. Because people are going to find something and be like, hey, you can't do that.
The bigger you get, the more hate you get, the more people attack you. Fortunately for me enough, I walked into stadiums where people are talking shit and saying, stuff and, fans. So I'm used to dealing with that part of it. And you definitely have to be able to operate in chaos in this business. You have to. Because it's live TV, it's live entertainment. Obviously the fighters are going out, though that's real. But, you got to put on the show for the fans. The production quality has to be top notch. You got people walking in, 1,000+ people at our fights and all this. You got a lot of that's happening. Big TV trucks outside. You got your VIP guests. We talked about the sponsors and people that is a part of what we're building. And so there's a lot of things that go on that that the general public don't get a chance to see. And so when I see the UFC or any WWE, any big organization, I'm like, that's next level, because I know what that looks like on the backside of it.
Are you similar to Vince and like you have your hands in just about everything? Especially starting out, I'm sure, because you want everything to go off as perfectly as it can. It's not always going to be perfect, but you want it to go off without a hitch, starting out.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything. I mean, from the marketing aspect of it to our step and repeats, our backdrops to fights.
Yeah.
Weigh-ins, venue negotiations with, casinos, hotels, where we're at, whatever venue. You name it, I'm pretty much doing it.
Now, where are most of the fights taking place?
In California,
okay.
for the main part.
Okay.
We had a big one. We just had our biggest viewership fight ever 2 weeks ago, at the Burbank Marriott event center there. We're on Fubo Sports, and so the fight before that we had in January, we broke into the top 10 most watched, which is great because they got a lot of soccer over there and other shows and stuff like that. Then we broke into the top 5, and this was when UFC had a fight. Sterling was fighting Cejudo.
Yep.
The Kentucky Derby had just went off at 4:00. We came on at 5. The Laker game, Cinco de Mayo, and Canelo, and we had our biggest viewership ever in the history of the company. And don't get me wrong, I'm doing a lot of media. I'm always going.
Of course.
I'm always going, but I think because the fans will tell you. It's the reason why I go back and forth with so many fans and people, good or bad, on social media, because they will tell you. Yeah, you got your average haters and stuff out there, but you got some fans like, yo, Shawne, I seen this, and this. And so you're not listening to everything, but when you have that many people watching what you've built, right, they're telling you like, hey, we think this is good. We think this was, we had 11 fights from that card. We had, I think, 6 or 7 amateurs, 6 or 7 pro fights. 8 out of those 11 were bangers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know two or three of these guys are gone already because they already had UFC contracts on the table, but they wanted to come and fight for us. And so that part of it, I think, is cool. And the fortunate part of the situation I've been, I played around some of the biggest and been around some of the biggest athletes in in the world. And so you understand and see the next up and coming superstar. You'll see him like, okay, that dude's he's gone. We ain't gonna be able to afford him in a fight or two. Or that girl, she's gone. She got it together. Like, she's really good with the media. She knows how to promote herself. She takes care of herself. She's disciplined. She shows up on time. Just all these little things. And I'm looking at them like, oh, okay, she's gonna be big time here in the next 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm. So is that like the goal for you to get them to that next stage, or do you look at as a marketer, you look at certain people because you're able to have that perspective to say, oh, she's great, she's going to move up quick. Oh, these people already have contracts, they're moving up quick. Do you look at a specific guy or gal and think like, oh, this could be our franchise, face of our company?
All the time. And it mainly happens when I get around them in the weigh-ins, because that's when I spend the most time. And don't get me wrong, I still train at Extreme Couture a couple days a week. When I'm in San Diego, I'm at the boxing club, or, down in Long Beach. I train at probably 10, because I travel so much. I've trained at 10 different gyms in the country. Down in Florida, I got a place. In Texas, I got a place. Arizona, fight ready, I think, down there too. I train.
Like Bellbank?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Great facility.
I'll pop in, and whether I'm hitting mitts, doing cardio, or, some kind of grappling or pummeling, I'm working when I go. So I see a lot of these guys, right? And so when I'm over there working out, I'm like looking over like, oh shit, who's that? I'll grab their coach or the manager. Who's that? Who's that? And they all kind of know me as well. So this is. I mean, it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. It's absolute chaos on the back end sometimes. But I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I couldn't even imagine like doing anything else.
Well, you're coming from a go office as a player, anyways. You know, competing in front of 50,000 people in football stadiums, right? It's like you can't go from that to just I'm just gonna hang out on the beach. You know, maybe start like I don't even know what you'd want to like. Was there any thought in your mind when you were like wrapping up your career besides MMA that you wanted to do?
No, some TV stuff. I did some
Just like being
movies.
an analyst
Yeah,
and-
analyst. I was on like when I played, I was on the Entourage and the Mindy Project. And I'll do a bunch of like one-offs. I had which actually I had a really good time doing. Some months ago was The Bachelor.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
I had a lot of fun. So they had like a Super Bowl type of thing. This is back in February when it showed. They had a Super Bowl thing where the contestants, the all the girls who were trying to be
right.
with The Bachelor. When my publicist called me, she said, "Hey, they want you to be on The Bachelor." And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Like to be the Bachelor?
No. So that's what
Or be on
that's
the
what I
show?
thought. So
Like for a
I
cameo.
initially said, I was like, hell no.
Yeah.
Everybody gonna see my asshole, right? Like, no, thank you. Like, oh yeah, Sean, whatever. I said, no, I'm good. I'm gonna pass on that. No, she said, no, they got this episode they want you to do where it's like a Super Bowl. It was airing around the Super Bowl. It's like a Super Bowl episode. I said, they want me to be a coach. And I came in. I was one coach, and then Antonio Gates was the coach of the other team.
Was it like one of those games they were playing to like
Yeah. It was so when I signed
impress
up,
the guy or girl?
dude. So when I signed up, I originally thought that it was going to be like flag football, a cute two-hand touch, right? I think, okay, that seemed like some easy work, right? Go out there and play for the cameras, So I got there, and I'm in my trailer, Antonio Gates' trailer next to me. So I went over to talk to him for a while. I said, hey, do you know much about, like, how it's going to go down? He said, no, man, I think they're playing football. So at this point, I'm still thinking flag football. I'm thinking two-hand touch. So they came in and they told us what we're going to do, where we're going to be staying in the role of the show. I still don't know. Like, I'm still thinking it's two-hand touch, flag football. I'm like, oh, okay.
They don't tell you anything.
They didn't tell us anything. I'm thinking it's, going to be cute and fun and play along with the camera and everybody's watching. So got there, and we're at the top of the hill. We're coming down the camera. And coming down the hill, they got the cameras in our face. I look up, and all the girls are coming down from the top, and they're full-on pads. Helmet, shoulder pads, cleats, thigh pads, knee pads. And I look at the producer. I'm like, what's going on?
Lingerie football.
Yeah, I was like, I said, what do you guys, what's going on? And I looked at Antonio Gates. I said, bro, did you know they were? He said, nah, man. I said, hold on. So they're going to hit, right? Like actual physically. The producer said, yeah, that's the goal.
Now, would you have agreed to that if you knew that going in?
Yeah, no, I still
Okay.
would have. But my mind was set like, hey, I got to do more like playing up for the
Right.
camera and making it exciting and, it's pull a flag and it's a, fun type
It's
of
the
deal.
Bachelor. It ain't too serious.
It's the Bachelor. It's like, hey, it's a Super Bowl episode. I get why they were doing it around Super Bowl time.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I said, this shit's gonna be fun.
Yeah, dude. Well, look at it from the other way. Like, let's say if it was the Bachelorette, like, oh yeah, they're probably gonna be in pads, a bunch of dudes, but like a bunch of girls coming down in helmets and pads and knee pads. You're like, I wasn't expecting this, but a part of me thinks this is really intriguing.
Yeah, because you got to think too, right? Even at that point, even when I saw them in the full-on pads, uniform, and all that stuff, I'm still thinking like, okay, they're not gonna. These girls are trying to rip each other's heads off.
Yeah.
Like it was.
It was trying to get chose.
Man, talking about getting chose. I mean, it was one of those things where I was like, hey, this can get dangerous, because they're out there like trying to run each other over, gang tackling, jumping
they
over
don't
the
know.
There's
pile.
no rules.
There's no,
Just a bar
so
fight.
I think it was like 1 or 2 concussions. One girl had a pretty decent sized knee injury. Like
What is going on?
I'm sitting there, I'm shocked, right? And so every time the camera is not on me, I'm just sitting like, yo, this is crazy. I love it, but it's crazy because even though I saw them have on the pads, and I still don't think that they're going to go as hard as they did. And they absolutely did. And it was, I mean, I had a lot of shoots and I've done a lot of work. That was one of my funnest.
Oh, I can imagine.
It was one of my funnest. And then this is the thing. This is the funny thing. So I go to Super Bowl.
Mhm.
It aired a week before the Super Bowl, and I go to Radio Row, right? And I walk it down there. We got all this media and stuff lined up for Radio Row, and I walk down. I'm going down the escalator, and some of the people are like, "Oh yeah, my wife saw you on The Bachelor," right? That happened like 5 or 6 times with different people just passed me. Rich Eisen go, and I saw Rich Eisen on the escalator. He said, "Oh yeah, my wife," and I love his wife to death. She come from my area. Said, yeah. But my wife said, I said, y'all watch The Bachelor. Just don't try to put it off on your girlfriend,
they're all like,
fiance,
my
wife.
girlfriend, my wife.
Oh no, your ass was watching The Bachelor, and you got to admit to it, because it's not. You can't come across 6 people and everybody say, "Oh, my wife or my girlfriend made me watch."
They're probably articulating everything that happened in
Yes.
detail. Yeah, my wife said you did that, and then remember when that happens, like, okay,
Yeah.
you were watching, buddy.
Yeah,
You were watching.
100%.
That's so funny though, because The Bachelor and The Bachelorette both have that unique audience.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm trying to think what else.
That's a different demographic than your average football
Yeah.
fan.
It was, and that was a cool part because they still have such a big fan base, and you got to think that people still watch it here in the States for sure. Like they had whole bachelor parties or the setup. I mean, people actually still do this, but you got to think it's playing in like 50 countries or something crazy, right? And so it's big here. Internationally, it's still mega big.
Do you know who that guy picked out of those girls?
Yeah, Zach. I forgot her name, but I still keep up with them.
Because
Aw,
I'm
see?
thinking of like all these girls are just literally taking each other out in football pads for me. Like, I don't know, would you want someone like that or?
That's listen. You need someone who can go through, intensity. There's a cost to love. You know what I'm saying? So to put them pads to compete for love, I like that. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like you both have been married, so I guess you guys
Don't
can,
know,
like-
not me.
Nah. No. I mean, we could be on The Bachelor. This just took a
Yeah.
weird turn. I'm not married though.
Okay, you're both fathers though.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're
Okay.
both. I'm bad.
I've had sex before. This is true.
Okay. Not what I meant, but
But
yeah.
I have, because my son was born, and it was not like magic. I put in that work. Anyway. I found my
Nice,
clip.
man.
I found my clip. There we go. There we go. This is a fact, though.
No,
did.
no, absolutely.
And he's about to turn 5 in a couple months, which means I've kept another human alive. I've supported him. He has like 20 Marvel action figures. So I'm really out here doing my thing. You know what I'm saying?
And your son's pretty young too, right?
He just turned 13
13?
in April. Yeah,
So that's
You let
a
him play
tough
football?
age.
he plays quarterback.
Oh, already.
He got on.
No
Yeah.
trepidation, no conversations like what happened with Hamler or what I forgot. his
Hamlin?
name. Hamlin, sorry.
Yeah, I'm like, don't get me wrong. Football is a very brutal sport. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I've had surgeries, shoulders, knees, and it's a very brutal sport. But it's hard for me to think to change anything, man. It brought so many other great things in my life, and I've taken care of so many people around me, family, close people and stuff like that, and put me in a position, gave me a platform. So I wouldn't change that part. But I did. When my son first started playing football, we did have that conversation. And my whole thing was I just wanted him to know that he doesn't have to play football because of me, right?
Yeah, of course.
And
it's huge.
it was funny because he's very much like me, and he took that as I was taking a shot at him. He's like basically calling him soft. And I said, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I know the downside of this game, and because of what I did and what I was able to build for him, he didn't have to do that, or didn't have to live up in my shoes, didn't have to do anything, right? So
Other than be himself.
Other than be himself, whatever he wanted to do, I would support, and he just wanted to play.
With that specific incident, did he say anything to you, or has he ever brought questions up? Or he's like, nah, I'm playing ball. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, that was like 'cause especially when you have a dad that played in NFL, got a name, whatever. There's already enough pressure on it. Like even at the games or practices and stuff, whenever I go and I'm there,
Everybody looking at him.
everybody looking at him, right? And so what I told him is that he'll, like I did, I had a target on me all the time. And so if you're not prepared to deal with that, like you're Shawne Merriman's kid, right? And so whether people know that initially or not, when they find out, you automatically become a target because everybody want to put Shawne Merriman's kid on his ass, right? Or hit him, do something. Say, hey, I just did this to Shawne Merriman. You know, so that I told him, I said, you have to be ready for that. And for me, it was that whole lights out thing, the moniker, the the name and recognition, the thing that I had with me going into. I knew that I walked in every Sunday, and I knew that somebody wanted to kick my ass every single Sunday. And I just had this mentality, like, okay, well, that's what it's going to be. You know, it's not happening, but that's what the mentality was going into a game.
Like your back was against the wall
Always.
every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's different. And again, he's not going to have that same experience as you did. Obviously, I know you growing up, like right outside what was, I think, like in that downtown Baltimore-esque, like Maryland, like murder capital of the world.
Oh
almost,
yeah, yeah.
during
My
that time.
it was more closer to Washington D.C., but yeah, my right next to the city I grew up in, it was top 5 or top 10 murder capital of the country for like 10 years straight. And our experiences are way different. He lives in a very nice. He has a nice
Privileged.
life. He has a nice life.
Well, that's what we work hard for, though, right?
Oh, of
Yeah.
course. It's like you want to be that person in your bloodline that changes the game for everybody moving forward.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's why, and for me, people talk a lot about NFL. They talk a lot about whatever. But when you have a platform like that and you do it right, it lasts a lifetime if you do it correctly.
Yeah.
And that was really kind of I have a lot of gratitude for getting a chance to play on that level for as long as I did and have that time.
Yeah. And when you talk about like longevity when it comes to building your brand per se, because
Yeah.
like you said, 20 years ago, it wasn't building your brand. You were just like cocky, you were arrogant, posting all this stuff, whatever. But now it's like if you're able to do this day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, like you're setting yourself up for generational success, not just success for like a 20-year playing career, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the goal, really, right? You want to build something that's going to outlast you. And for me personally, that was always it. Like, people are going to talk about lights out way, way, way after I'm gone, right? Whether, if you watch sports and you're a fan of sports in the last 25 years or 20 years, if you're in that, you when you say lights out, people are going to start to associate me with it at some point. I was even at John Brinkus from Sports Science, right? I went down and seen him. He had an event, a launch for the Brinks TV in Atlanta, and I was talking to somebody there, and it's like my dad is she didn't know who I was, right? She said my dad is a big football fan, and I was like, oh, okay, just tell him you're talking to Lights Out, right? And they're like, oh shit, Shawne Merriman, and so it took a long time, energy to not only get that out there, but it takes a long time to kind of imprint that, because for one, you got to earn it.
Yep.
You got to be like, you can't go out there and fucking play like a slouch or you got to go balls to the wall all the time. You have to have that with you. But more importantly, keep up the branding side of it where it makes sense, where people are like, oh shit, Lights Out clothing brand, because I had that in Tilly's and DTLR. I had it in about over 200 stores in the country.
Man.
And so you keep that up long enough, and you just start chopping at that tree, just chop, build to the point where, you become synonymous with that name.
And that's the thing that does not happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
Like you, as a player, day in and day out, have to practice building your brand, whether it be on social media, the marketing side, working with sponsors, building those relationships with people that are going to be the financial backing to what you're building. Like that takes years.
Yeah. And for me, I love the process, right? I'm not going to say I don't care about the end result, because I definitely do. Nobody want to do all this shit for nothing, right? I'm just not the case. You're obviously building it for an exit. You're building it to one day. You don't want to be working the same way you're doing now at 65.
Yep.
You want to work, but you don't want to be grinding, right? Nobody wants to do that. But I actually just really love the process. Even the success and the failures, that you have, because ultimately that failure that you have opens up a different avenue of something you got to figure out that you wouldn't have to figure out before.
Yep.
And so every time you fail at something, you just figure out something a little bit more, like, okay, cool, I'm great at these things. I failed at this thing. Let's figure this failure out, and let's go forward. And then that ultimately is what makes you, because I don't celebrate a lot of small victories. I'm trying to get better with that. Like I want the big shit. I'm like, but recently I just really gotten better at being happy with a small victory, right? Like
Rome ain't building one day, Sean.
What's that?
Rome ain't building one day.
No,
baby steps?
I get. But see, you're right, and so that is what I've been working on.
I feel like as a dad too, you gotta, with your son, be like, yeah, enjoy the small victories. Like, that's taking you to the big goal.
Yeah,
eventually.
and it's you're right, and something I constantly have to work at to understand. Hey, be happy, like if this was 3 years ago, and we got the numbers back for football, right, and we're in top 5 now. My mind is like, shit, why are we not number 1?
Yep.
Like this is okay, thanks, but why are we not number 1? And so instead of like, hey, you guys, football carries international soccer. They got some other big programs over there. They got some other fight programs. You guys you're up there and surpassing a lot of them. And so, me now, I'm like, oh shit, that's a big deal. I celebrate it. But some years ago, I wouldn't have. I was like, man, why are we not number 1? And I also had to change that philosophy with a lot of stuff because a lot of people around me get discouraged.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, damn, we put in all this work, we done this, we did. Why are you not? Why are you not happy? And I'm like, I'm happy, but we should be number 1.
Yeah. Top 5's great, but like you should have that mindset. Like, why aren't we number 1? And that's what you keep striving towards.
Right.
But you also got to understand in the moment, be like,
Yes.
five's great. 5 is pretty good.
Yes.
Like that's not easy to do. It's difficult though. It's difficult to turn off that wire in your brain that says like I have to be the best here.
Yeah, it's the hardest, to be honest. It's something I'm constantly learning because I'm so competitive. Like, and not with other people. I'm just competitive myself. I like to see how far I can go. Like what's that edge? You know what I mean? Like, how much can you have on your plate before you sit around one day and be like, okay, I'm doing too much.
Yeah.
Or like I'm
doing too much, and I'm sure your body will tell you that too. Like you'll experience not necessarily burnout, but like something will happen and be like, I gotta slow down here.
That's what my gauge is. It's never like, okay, I got these 10 things. Like, okay, these 10 are fine. If I could do 11, I'm doing 11. And then the 11 might say, okay, all right, you gotta sit down for a little bit. And so my body is actually my gauge now because I'm in the gym, still 6 days a week. I'm in there 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I work out at Dragon's Lair, here in the morning for weights, and then if I got time right after, I'll go to Extreme Couture and I'll do some rounds in the bag, or I'll get my coach over to hit mitts, or get any kind of work in with any of the fighters, anything I can, and I'll do that, 6 days a week. In between then, I'm working throughout the day. So my body has always kind of been my key. Because mentality, I'm not gonna ever say, oh, that's enough. But my body will say, okay, all right, you gotta sit down for a little bit.
Yeah, and that's tough too because you talk about wanting to do all of these different things, right? It's like it keeps your brain moving, it keeps the excitement part of it moving, the competitor in you, whether it's like starting, your own promotion, reading certain books, gaining all this new knowledge. It's either like you're going through the pain of growing through that and learning new things that are difficult to learn, or you're just sitting around, just being, upset, feeling like, oh, I'm complacent right now. I'm not learning anything new.
Yeah, and that too is I try to learn something every day.
Yeah.
So I try to learn something every day because, I look at information as a weapon for me, right? So I know that I'm gonna bust my ass and I'll work anybody. That's my mentality. I'm gonna do that. But if you arm me with information, that's when you weaponize what you're doing.
You're working harder and smarter.
That's when you start to really, really make these leaps and bounds in life, in business, and everything you're doing because the work ethic can be there. Sometimes people are like, oh man, I'm grinding. I've been up and I'm like, okay, what did you get done? Not how hard what did you actually accomplish, right? What did you get done? And because it's two separate conversations that you have. It's work, not working smarter, right? And just creating a bunch of work for yourself to go and tell everybody how hard you're working. But what are you really getting done? Yeah. And to me, I'm like, once you arm me with information along with the work that I'm guaranteed to put in, then I start to work really smart and being efficient in everything. And so that hard work and being efficient, information, all these things coming together, you start making these leaps and bounds. You know, we're only 9 fights in to Lights Out. Think about that shit. We talk about celebrating small wins. I brought myself back down and said, guys, you're in the top 5 most watched on a very big streaming service platform, and that covers international soccer, and I think they got baseball and stuff.
That's right.
You're in the top 5, dude. You're 9 fights into a whole organization. That shit is pretty cool.
It's still a baby.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But you're insanely like just hearing you talk about all of this stuff. It's like, okay, he's got the knowledge behind it and he's putting it into action, right? And like that's the biggest thing we were talking about before you even got here. It's like people have all of these ideas, but they don't actually take the action step forward to start them. Like that's how it starts, and then you learn if it's going to work or not.
You know that that is part of the biggest part of people's failures, in my opinion, is having all these ideas and all this is cool and that, and then trying to create the perfect plan. That never.
You just got to do it.
You got to do that shit. You know, because at the end of the day, you just, if you're trying to create something perfect, you're just never gonna start.
Yeah.
And people like that, I stay so far away from. They're trying to perfect, and this got to go. And okay, by this month, this quarter, we got it. Before you know it, you haven't done shit. And I'm all action. I was like, give me the information, what I need to do, along with this work that I'm gonna put in, and I'm gonna figure it out. And so I've always been a action first. You know, information. You got to get information before you don't just start doing stuff. You're gonna blow a lot of money, waste a lot of time. But if you got that information along with starting something out, you just go. Get the shit off the ground and just see what happens. Mm-hmm. You know, 50 in his book, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Right. He had a book, and he had this saying, you know, just be doing shit. Like just do it. Right. Just get up and just do it. You know, get whatever information that you need to go and do it, and just get up and do it.
Yep.
You know,
it's just it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You're gonna find out what sticks.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
That be a sponge.
Yeah.
Sometimes just get in the building.
Absorb knowledge.
Well,
Be
I mean,
listener.
like in radio, I was just like, I'm gonna take this street team job. It's not what I want to do, but I'm gonna get in the building. I'm gonna meet people. I'm gonna ask them, hey, can I learn this? Can I do this? This, that, and the third. And like he just said, sometimes you just got to do it. I have one final question. All right, and I'm taking this. We doing a 180. So growing up playing football, and I was a huge Madden player. Back then, they did the Madden challenges at all the stadiums every year. Pops took me to Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago, Indianapolis. I was competing at these tournaments. Used to take my science binder, and I took out the notes, and I replaced the notes. I ordered online all the Madden playbooks for every team so I could see the playbooks. My teachers were like, he finally studying. Idiots. I was studying my playbooks in Madden. So long story short, I have a philosophy that every team in the NFL should have a pro Madden player on the staff to manage the clock. Because when you're doing these tournaments, 4-minute quarters, you really only got 1-2 possessions. These dudes know what to do with 30 seconds, how to get the ball down the field, how to use the timeouts. As a professional football player, when my fat ass asks you if a Madden player should be on the coaching staff, what's your response? You see my philosophy of what I'm getting at?
I do.
Because they're playing 4 2-minute quarters sometimes. Some tournaments is 2 minutes, so you only get in the ball once. So the way they're using the clock and going out of bounds with their plays.
It's 100% innovative and forward thinking. I mean, don't get me wrong. And, you know, what's crazy that reminds me of is how the Moneyball movie and all this stuff used to be, where they start using numbers and data to do that. I wouldn't be opposed to somebody trying it out. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't be opposed to somebody trying out, because they may not have actual experience calling NFL plays in the situation, whatever, but the time management of it.
Like the Chiefs, when they scored them 13 seconds versus the Bills to go to the Super Bowl, and everyone was shocked. I was like, that's happened to Madden before, because there's certain ways and they know how to exploit that. So it's just something I thought, and it's, you know, some people downplay it, but shout out to my Madden players, basically. That's all.
Dude, I used to have tournaments at the crib, my movie theater at the house after practice.
Oh, really?
We used to bet from money.
It's the only time I had money as a kid. I was 13 years old, and I had like 3 G's. And this was just playing online or playing people, money games. It
Yeah.
was a different culture, and it was like very innovative. In fact, now they do Ultimate Team, which is basically like if you have people collect sports cards, right? So in Madden, you start off and you got a whole bunch of crappy cards, but they might drop a Shawne Merriman, a Tom Brady, and you're building this team like fantasy, but you playing it out. So shout out to my Madden players. Let's get one of these pro players on the staff to do time management.
I'm not opposed to that. I think that's a good idea.
Oh, I agree with you both. I think that would be it would be innovative, and it would show how much people are actually paying attention to what people want these days. Because there's so many things that, especially for us in media, and you've probably seen it too, where it's like the Pat McAfees of the world getting these ESPN deals. You didn't think those were going to happen, right? Especially for like the buttoned up ESPN to allow Pat McAfee to keep his show exactly the way it is.
Well, you gotta think. Media and just everything is just changed. Everything has changed. And so, 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't even be able to have your platform. I mean, you got some people that were on YouTube and stuff like that. But now, these big Twitch accounts and like you can have a big following. Like a couple of my favorite, I love the Pivot, right, with Ryan Clark and I'm Athlete with Brandon Marsh and Shannon.
They're really good.
I'm not Shannon. Was it? Yeah.
Used to be. It's a whole thing, but yeah.
So yeah, at the end of the day, I love the fact that I love anything you go out and build your own because it take a lot of balls to do it, right? Because people are telling you no, you're not getting the cheer, and it's only a couple cheers when you go as an analyst, right? On the big networks, NBC, Fox Sports, you only got a couple cheers there, and I was been in that chair, NFL Network. I've been in that chair for years, and when they don't have a seat for you anymore, then what are you gonna do? So a lot of people now have the ability to go and create their own platform because there's so many different ways out here. And Pat, I think Pat McAfee will go down as one of the best to do it. But as far as building his own platform and growing it, but I think there needs to be like a case study on like how he did it and went about it because we see the tank top and Pat's crazy as hell. The show's out. It could be outlandish. Sometimes I watch it all the time. He has some great guests on there, great people to come through because his platform is so big. But behind the scenes, I go back to talking about the behind the scenes stuff. People really need to see how and what happened on the back end in order for them to build something that mega, that big.
I think it's at very much first is being true and authentic to yourself, which Pat has done tremendously. Yeah. And then obviously he's been smart enough to see where he could take it from there on out because ESPN wouldn't do this type of deal with anybody else.
No, but ESPN, give them credit, they're smart, right? They're realizing he has a platform, and I remember when he started doing the college game day and all that stuff, whatever, wearing a suit, and he's being himself, and that's the hardest thing to do, especially when you talk about mainstream media because they have a look, and they want you to say a certain thing. They want you to when you go into these shows on live TV, whether it's the Foxes of the world, the NBCs, wherever. You got A block, B block, C block, and you got 4 hosts. Somebody produces in your ear, you're reading the teleprompter, and you got 2 minutes to get your point out.
Yep. Ain't no freedom.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, ain't no. So like, hey, if the biggest topic in sports is Lamar Jackson, you're talking Lamar Jackson. Yep. If you're talking, to Tom, we're talking about Tom Brady. And matter of fact, you only got 2 minutes to do it. And so you have to articulate. That's why, like the Stephen A's of the world and all these people are really, 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 really good on TV. Shannon Sharps and all these guys that are really good on TV. You have to articulate what you're trying to get out in 2 minutes. Because, I don't know how long we've been on here. We've been on here for a while, right?
Oh, yeah. We can do this all day long, but my guest is waiting patiently.
Yeah. No, so that's what I'm saying. Like, you have 2 minutes to articulate something of that magnitude. Yeah. So some of the best are really good at what they do.
Oh, my God. It's incredible. Again, I could do this all day long with you guys.
I heard that Adrian Hernandez, that kid's crazy, Shawne. That's me.
Oh, yeah.
That kid's crazy. Anyway, sorry.
No, absolutely, dude.
He's had 6 before. Anyway, I just want to make sure we recap everything that's happened this past hour.
Oh, yeah. It's been like 90 minutes, man. Time flies when you're just spewing nonsense. But this was a lot of fun. Next time you're available, we got to do this again because there's so much more I do want to pick your brain about.
Big fight we got coming up July 22nd in San Diego. You can find the information at lightsoutxf.com. this will be our biggest fight yet. It's my first time, going back to San Diego to have something since I played there. So we want to
It's a homecoming, baby.
This will be our biggest one. I'll make sure of that.
And you heard the man himself, lightsoutxf.com for all your information. Lightsoutxf on Instagram as well, right?
Yep.
So thanks so much to Shawne Merriman, Adrian Hernandez. Thank you so much for sticking it out all day long here with me at Blue Wire Studios. This was episode 693 of the podcast. Guys, remember to comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV. Check it out.